Rev up your engines! Check out this Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, a quintessential American muscle car. Or is it? Well, actually, it's a Canadian muscle car. Check it out, made in Canada. Yes, Canadians have built the American muscle cars for a long time. Now, they don't make them anymore, but they got some very good workers there. I had a friend who worked in the factory. They were hard working, hard drinking too, but generally they weren't drinking and working at the same time. Now, a lot of guys think, oh, these things are too expensive. Guess what? This guy bought this car 5 years ago for $2,000. Granted, it didn't look like this. It was under a tree covered with leaves and tree sap and bird droppings, but still, it was the same basic car with a massive V8 engine, the same one that's under the hood now. There it is. These 5.7 liter V8s can run forever. And yes, he had to put a water pump on it, and the alternator went out, and one time he parked it, it actually started on fire, but they put it out and there wasn't much damage done. Now looking at this one overall, you can see it's been repainted, and they did a pretty good job repainting it. It didn't come with these wheels. He added those on, and typical for GMs with this mileage, at 150,000 miles on it, the transmission went out, so I put a new transmission in it. That's always the weak thing in these vehicles. You consider he's owned it for 5 years and his total investment is $7,000. What are you gonna get for $7,000 these days? That looks like this and is as much fun to drive around in. Now this is a modern enough vehicle, it's fuel injected. For a big V8 engine with an automatic transmission, this thing gets about 20 miles a gallon on a highway when you're going, 75 miles an hour. You might think, oh, that stinks. Well, little history lesson here. Back in the day, a friend of mine had a 69 Firebird. It had a 4-speed standard transmission. Oh, that was the big deal back in those days. It also had a 4-barrel carburetor. He never wanted to step on the gas the whole way because that opened up the 4 barrels. In which case he got about 4, maybe 5 miles a gallon when he drove it that way. So 20 doesn't sound all that bad in retrospect. And performance oriented, they got good disc brakes, and he added the slotted discs for better stopping in the front and just the regular discs in the back, but that's plenty fine enough for a vehicle like this. And when we go inside, we can see it's got seat covers on it. The seats wear out, it's GM. Got the traditional setup with a tachometer, water temperature, but it does have an oil pressure gauge. And it also has a charging meter too, not just an idiot light, it shows you the voltage. Okay, let's see how it starts. Starts right up, and being an American car, it's got killer heat for the winter. But sadly, the air conditioning is broken, as in many of these older generation GMs. The compressors did have a tendency to fail as they age, but this particular one is new enough that you're not going to have any big problems. The older ones, of course, used Freon R12, which is super expensive and almost impossible to find these days. But as you can see on the sticker here, this baby has R134A in it. Now, if you want to fix the air conditioning, modern system, you don't have to worry about retrofitting it from Freon to 134A, and the problem with retrofitting them is this. The old R12 cooled better system, but it polluted the atmosphere. When they went to 134A, it supposedly doesn't ruin the ozone layer. It's not as efficient of a system, so it needs bigger condensers, bigger fans, and if you retrofit an R12 to 134A, they often won't cool very well, especially at lower speeds. But as you can see here, this is a modern vehicle with an electric cooling fan that can handle those systems. Let's say if you were buying an older Firebird that had the fan mounted on the water pump, if you're going to convert them to 134A, you would have to also retrofit the radiator and put a big electric cooling fan on it if you're going to drive it and stop and go traffic. Otherwise, it would not work all that well. But this is already set up for it, so if you really want an AC version one, get a newer one like this. Don't go out and buy a really old one, because you can get it for a bunch of headaches with the old R12 systems. Let's take it for a spin, see how it goes. All right, it's an old car, but the power steering still goes. Makes a nice sound. This one's new enough. It's still got airbags in it. Got the T-top if you want to take the top off. And sure, the fabric's coming off. That's just typical on GM. You can do it all over if you want. Or you can go retro rat look and tear it all off. Put onto the bare metal. It's got the classic American V8 engine in. When you step on it, it makes a good sound, but it also has quite a bit of acceleration to it. And you can see how smooth this one shifts. But I said that's because he put a new transmission in it. That's the one thing that went out. You ever buy a used one of these? Always check the transmission. Now, if you get it like he did for $2 grand, you don't care. You're expected to put a new one in. But if you're paying high dollar, have a mechanic check the transmission out as the numero uno thing. But strangely enough, the man who bought this got it when he was 15. He has not wrapped it around any trees at all. That must be a world's record. Because both of my sons wrecked the first cars I bought them. And it's not just a sports car. It's a hatchback. You can put all kinds of stuff. Put the seat down, you got a lot of space for doing stuff. How many sports cars can you say that about? If you wanted to tow, you could, but who's going to ruin a sports car by putting a tow hitch on it, yeah? And I really like the headlights that he added on. You could have a lot of fun with these things for not all that much money when you consider what cars cost today. Here we got his total investment, about $7 grand. He's been driving it for like 6-7 years. Not a bad deal at all. So if you thought that American, well, I mean Canadian muscle cars were out of your league, you might think twice. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Now you got a big family, you feel you gotta get an SUV, but you like driving, you don't want a boring one. Here's some new 2020 ones that certainly won't be boring. The 2021 Dodge Durango Hellcat. Now it can tow 8,700 pounds, but it's very fast. It has 710 horsepower in an SUV. It also has Brembo brakes on the front and rear, so you can stop pretty good. Another one for people who like driving and want an SUV, the 2021 Mazda CX-5. Now it doesn't meet the Hellcat with 700 horsepower. There's no arguing that. If you get the turbocharged one, it does put out 250 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque, so it's got a lot of zip. It's going to get a lot better gas mileage than the Dodge. It'll probably last a lot longer, too. Another one with a little zip is a 2021 Chevy Tahoe Z71. It's got a 355 horsepower V8, and if you want the option, it's got a 420 horsepower V8. But interestingly enough, only the 5.3 liter engine, smaller engine, can tow 8,400 pounds. So it's set up more for towing, where the other one's set up more for speed. So if you really want speed, get the 5.3 liter V8 with 355 horsepower. And of course, if you don't mind going electric, there's the 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E Performance Edition. It has 480 horsepower and goes 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. For a family SUV, that's really screaming, of course. It's an electric car. It's not a gasoline car. You got to deal with plugging it in. And if you're looking for another fast SUV that's fun to drive, the 2021 Acura Rdx. It's turbocharged, all-wheel drive. It's got 272 horsepower with only a 4-cylinder engine and a 10-speed automatic transmission. And last but not least is the 2021 Toyota 4Runner. You get the TRD edition. They are zippy enough, 270 horsepower. And it's got the Toyota reliability. It's going to run forever. So you have to think about, if you bought the Hellcat SUV versus the 4Runner, I'm sure the 4Runner would probably last 8 or 10 times longer in terms of both time and mileage. So you want a little bit of speed and a lot of reliability, get the Toyota. You want a lot of speed and less reliability, get the Dodge. Well, if you got Bridgestone or Firestone tires, you might want to check about a recall. They're recalling a bunch of their tires now because there might be a hole in the inner liner that can lead to them losing all their air pressure. Not a great thing here. Now, this is in the U.S. and Canada, and it covers Firestone Destination LE3 tires. So if you have those, check it out. And Bridgestone Ecopia HL422 Plus. These are relatively expensive tires. So if you have either of those tires, go to a Bridgestone or Firestone dealer. Bridgestone owns Firestone now, so it's all the same company. If you're within the serial numbers of the ones that they say are bad, they're going to replace your tires. Now, there's a great one. They'll probably tell you, oh no, your serial number's on counter. Well, at any rate, you want to check this out. And if they do give you new tires, great. If not, take a picture of your tire, look it up, take a picture of this recall, and if anything happens in the future, you'll be able to sue them and get a whole bunch of money if they don't do it correctly. They always want to do the smallest amount as possible. It could be that there's more that are involved, which they find later on. So just to make sure, take pictures of your tires, have it proved. You go to a dealer and they say yours aren't, get it in writing that yours aren't. Keep that receipt. So if something happens later on, you got proof for it. And they can't say, oh, well, he didn't bring it in, blah, blah, blah. Because I've had that happen to customers. So always keep a paper trail. In most people's cases these days, a phone trail. Take a picture of it. Put it on your screenshots. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.